James Lynch from the Gazette.
Okay, ready? Yes, ma'am. Well, good morning. Yesterday afternoon, we got some good news from President Trump. He announced that he will be extending the National Guard Title 32 orders through mid-August. I am really grateful to the President and his administration for recognizing the important role that the Guard is playing in states across the country. The Iowa National Guard has played a critical role in our state's response and recovery efforts, from distributing PPE across the state and supporting Iowa's food banks to operating Test Iowa sites and helping us conduct contact tracing to help us understand the scope of virus activity and to do everything we can to manage and contain it. So I want to thank General Correll and the men and women of the Iowa National Guard for their service to Iowans during this time. You know, the impact of COVID-19 has been felt far and wide across the United States, including right here at home in Iowa. A record number of Iowans are unemployed, small businesses are struggling, and our agriculture industry is being challenged in ways that they could never have imagined. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, which was passed by Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support and signed into law by President Trump on March 27th, provides more than $2 trillion to protect the American people from the public health and economic impacts of COVID-19, while assisting workers and families, supporting small businesses, and helping us preserve jobs. Today, I'm going to provide an overview of how we intend to use the funding that's been allocated to our state through the CARES Act Relief Fund to help Iowa businesses and families, farmers and communities and healthcare providers, to help us improve technology infrastructure and ensure that we can continue to effectively manage COVID-19 over the long run. But first, I have asked Senator Ernst to join me today and share the work that's occurring at our nation's capital to help Iowans and all Americans recover from this national crisis. Joni, it's good to see you, and I just want to say thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Governor, very much. It is wonderful
to be here with you, and I truly do appreciate your leadership over the time that you have been in the governor's office, but specifically the last 3 months when our state has really needed a level of compassion and optimism, and you have provided that. So thank you so much, Governor. I appreciate everyone being on today's call as well, and what I would like to do is just recap where we are as a federal government with the CARES Act. I'll go through some of the provisions and what Iowa has seen from those provisions, and then where we can look to in the future, perhaps with an upcoming Phase 4 package. So a few of the interesting items that we'll take away from the CARES Act first. And since we passed that, making sure that it was implemented correctly has been a big focus of mine. And what we are seeing, especially in the area of small business relief, through May 23rd, Iowa businesses have received over 54,000 Paycheck Protection Program loans worth over $5 billion. And again, that is Iowa specific. So we had a few other wins. We did fight to ensure that our county hospitals, our rural electric cooperatives, and some of our nonprofit colleges were able to receive those PPP loans. They are now able to do that. And we do have some ongoing efforts, though, things that I would like to see further modified or those included. So we're still working on securing access to PPP for many of our news outlets, especially those local owned media outlets, our local chambers of commerce, and we're working to provide flexibility for businesses who have been shut down but have not had enough time to rehire their workers. And I do hear this a lot from businesses, especially our hospitality industry, like our restaurants and our hotels. The economic impact payments, those direct cash assistance payments that came to Iowans, we have nearly 1.5 million Iowans who have received those dollars, totaling $2.7 billion. Again, that is Iowa specific. So through that, we were able to ensure that those that are on Social Security, SSI, and VA benefits who normally don't file their taxes, we were able to make sure they were getting those payments without submitting more paperwork to get their economic impact payment. And some ongoing efforts in that area. Of course, now we are working to ensure that moms and dads of newborns, those that were born within this year, are able to get the $500 payments this year instead of waiting until next year. And we're also pushing for those with adult dependents, ensuring that they have access to the $500. And we're also working on support to our family caregivers as well. Within the ag community and biofuels, we've had a number of wins there as well. So we were able to bolster that Commodity Credit Corporation, which we are focusing on getting those funds out right now. Applications for that took place earlier this week and will be ongoing. And we made sure that the economic injury disaster loans were accessible for ag businesses and our farmers. Excuse me. We'll continue to fight, of course, for biofuel and ethanol interests. We do have a number of ongoing efforts there. I've partnered with Senator Chuck Grassley and Amy Klobuchar on some of those ethanol interests that are very important to the Midwest. And then, of course, I'll wrap up with some of the wins. Healthcare, we've been able to secure over $336 million for Iowa hospitals and healthcare providers, as well as over $383 million for rural providers specifically, and over $11 million for the state's community health centers. I really appreciate our CHCs. They do fill a gap when we don't have rural providers like our hospitals in those areas. So future relief and what we can look forward to coming up, my priorities, we need essential worker tax relief, and we see this across Iowa with so many of our men and women that are showing up to work every single day, doing the right thing to keep our our healthcare centers working, our economy moving forward, and I'm proposing a suspension of federal income or payroll taxes for those essential workers during this pandemic. Child care funding, another big push for mine even prior to COVID-19 was ensuring that we're closing up some of those child care deserts. So what we are asking for is an additional $25 billion to support in a phase 4 package through a child care and development block grant. We've secured $32 million within the state of Iowa so far, but that's just a small portion compared to what we'd like to see across the United States. And then also working with our domestic violence organizations. We have seen a spike in increased domestic violence, of course, during the pandemic as well, with people living and residing in close quarters. So I'm working with Senator Amy Klobuchar to make sure that we're including additional funds in our next bill. Those are just a few priorities and a number of the wins that we have seen for Iowa. Again, just ways to get us up and moving again. And Governor, I'll turn it back over to you, but thank you so much for allowing me the time today to get the great word out to Iowans how we're supporting from the federal government. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Joni. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you and really the entire congressional delegation for all of your hard work on behalf of Iowans and just really advocating for them during this unprecedented time. And we look forward to continuing to work with you as we continue to recover and move through this unprecedented pandemic that we find ourselves in. So thanks for the hard work and really advocating in Washington, D.C. on behalf of Iowans. I appreciate it very, very much. You know, I'm also grateful to the Trump administration for providing the financial support to help the cost of COVID-19 and fuel our economic recovery. The CARES Act established the $150 billion Coronavirus Relief Fund to help states, local, and tribal governments to navigate the impact of the pandemic. You know, Iowa received $1.25 billion in funding that can be used to cover expenses that were necessarily incurred due to COVID-19 that were not accounted for in our budget as of March 27th when the CARES Act was signed into law and were incurred during the period beginning March 1st and ending on December 30th of 2020. Here in Iowa, because of fiscally responsible budgeting practices, we are fortunate to be in a very strong financial position prior to COVID-19 impacting our state. When we closed the books in fiscal year 19, we had a budget surplus of nearly $300 million. Our cash reserves were full, and our labor participation rate was one of the highest in the country. Iowa's allocation from the Coronavirus Relief Fund will help cover the significant and unexpected expenses due to the pandemic, positioning us well for recovery and growth in the months to come. So today I want to share the plan for leveraging the $1.25 billion in federal funding to assist Iowans and our state. At this time, we'll be allocating $700 million and holding the balance of the $550 million while we continue to monitor the status of Iowa's Unemployment Trust Fund and any additional unforeseen COVID-19 expenses. Of the $700 million, I've allocated $215 million to provide relief for Iowa businesses and families. And this includes the Small Business Relief Program, which has helped more than 4,000 small business owners reopen their doors and get Iowa back to work. Support for Iowans economically impacted by COVID-19, providing short-term relief to Iowa renters and homeowners in immediate risk of eviction or foreclosure. And Director Durman is going to give us some more details on that shortly. Support for workforce initiatives that create opportunities for hardworking Iowans, and also funding to help us resolve food insecurity issues by supporting Iowa's food banks, as you heard about yesterday from Lieutenant Governor Adam Gregg. We've allocated $100 million to provide relief for Iowa farmers. Agriculture is the foundation of our economy, and our farmers produce the livestock and grain that is necessary to feed and fuel the nation. But as you heard yesterday, COVID-19 has significantly impacted our farmers and our processing capacity, backing up livestock on farms. Our Iowa ethanol industry is currently operating at 70% of capacity. 1.35 billion gallons capacity is offline. And when Iowa's agriculture industry is impacted, our state's economy is impacted. I've also allocated $125 million that will go towards relief for Iowa communities. Over the last several weeks, my team and I have worked with local officials across the state, and we will continue to work with the Iowa State Association of Counties and the League of Cities to understand their expenses that are tied to COVID-19 and to put funding to work in their communities that supports their recovery efforts. To begin that process, I've also committed to cover their 10% of FEMA match, and we'll be launching a new online payment portal that will provide transparency for Iowans and efficiencies for local cities and counties applying for reimbursement of COVID-19 related expenses. I've also allocated $50 million for the relief of Iowa healthcare providers. To date, Iowa's hospitals, clinics, and nursing facilities have rightly already received over $700 million through CARES funding. So this money will be allocated for substance use and behavioral health providers who have also played a critical role in serving Iowans throughout our COVID-19 response, and will continue to provide those much-needed services in the days to come. $85 million will be allocated to expanding access to telework, telehealth, and telelearning. To do that, our state must address broadband capacity and access, as well as modernize our IT systems that are necessary to conducting business, education, healthcare, and life from rural communities to the state capitol. $125 million is allocated for our state response to COVID-19 to cover expenses from PPE purchases to overtime for frontline direct care employees, and others. And finally, again, $550 million will be held for the Unemployment Trust Fund and additional unforeseen COVID-19 expenses. Earlier this week, I did announce that the Iowa Finance Authority would be launching the COVID-19 Iowa Eviction and Foreclosure Prevention Program to assist Iowans who have experienced a documented loss of income due to COVID-19 and are unable to pay their rent or mortgage. Housing assistance is one way we'll provide relief for Iowa families through the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And I'm pleased to say that the program is now accepting applications, and here to provide additional information about eligibility and how to apply is Director Debbie Durham. Debbie?
Thank you, Governor, and good morning to all. It has been said famously by Maya Angelou that the ache for home lives in all of us. Homes all across Iowa is where we find refuge, where we make memories, where we celebrate milestones, and where we find comfort during hard times. And many, the past couple of months, have spent significantly more time at home. Unfortunately, these weeks have also brought a sense of worry to many Iowans about how they're going to keep their homes due to a job loss or reduction in income due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. So I'm proud to say that we accepted the governor's challenge, that our team has been working diligently to stand up a program that will provide our fellow Iowans with some relief in their time of need. Today, immediately after the conference, we are launching the COVID-19 Iowa Eviction and Foreclosure Prevention Program. So I'm going to provide you with some program details at this time. Rental assistance for up to 4 months, beginning with April 1, rent for a maximum of up to $3,200. Mortgage payment assistance beginning April 1st, mortgage payments for a maximum of up to $3,000. To be eligible for the program, Iowans must be a current renter or homeowner that has not been able to pay their rent or mortgage due to the COVID-19 related loss of income on or after March 17, 2020, because we have to show this line of sight to COVID. Have a household income that does not exceed 80% of the median family income limits for the county at the time of application. So we have an application system that these limits will be available and automatically generated per applicant. So that, because they change per county. Must not be receiving, and this is very important, they must not be receiving the additional $600 a week in additional unemployment funds as a federal stimulus benefit. If you're unable to make your rent or mortgage payment, I encourage you to visit, and all of this information will be on iowahousingrovery.com. Review the eligibility requirements, and we have a very detailed FAQ there that will help all of you understand the program and the details of. Complete the pre-application survey to ensure to meet the preliminary requirements to be assisted through the program. Once you do that, if you meet the initial requirements, then we encourage them to complete the full application carefully. Assistance will be granted on a first-come, ready-to-proceed, which means it is critical that all requested information is provided in full at time of application. Also, please note that applications for eviction prevention assistance will require an electronic landlord verification. And because of this, renters who apply are encouraged to notify their landlords of their application, because they will have to qualify. Applicants will receive an email with instructions on how to track the status of their application through every step of the review process. We learned a lot from the Small Business Relief Program, I can tell you. Now it's all automatic, so we are learning from our errors. If approved, payments will be issued directly to the landlord or to the mortgage service providers. It will not go to the individual. The application period will remain open, and as I said, until all funds are exhausted. The program will also be supported by bilingual Spanish call center and IFA's housing recovery team, who will be standing ready to assist anyone with these applications. Not everyone, though, we know in need of assistance is going to be eligible for financial assistance through this program because they don't meet the timeline. And so because of this, we have formed a partnership with Iowa Legal Aid, who will be able to provide free legal assistance for renters and homeowners who are at risk of eviction or foreclosure at this time. So, Governor, I am pleased to announce that we accepted the challenge, and that as soon as this is over, we will go live with the application. And again, any detailed information, because I know I went through a lot, I encourage you to go to iowahousingrovery.com, and it will all be there for you. And any additional questions we'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Well, I love to challenge Director Durham, because I know each time that I do that her and her team step up, meet that challenge, and exceed it. So I appreciate so much the work that you and your team have done to quickly develop solutions for the challenges that Iowans are facing during this time. From the Small Business Relief Program to aiding rent and mortgage payments, these programs are helping Iowans get back on their feet. And really, very, very grateful. Thanks for all you do and for your leadership. So Iowans are gradually getting back to life and business as usual, and it's time for me and my team to do the same thing. For the last 80-plus days, my team and I have been working from the State Emergency Operations Center. On Monday, we will be returning to the Capitol, preparing for the legislative session to resume while continuing our ongoing efforts to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. While today is our last day working from the State Emergency Operations Center, SEOC will remain open throughout the COVID-19 response. And members will continue to meet daily as we have for the last 12 weeks, but of course most meetings will be held virtually. I'll continue to hold regular press conferences to keep Iowans informed, but I am adjusting the schedule to provide 2 live broadcasts a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. starting next week. I want to thank Iowa PBS again for being a tremendous partner throughout this time. You've made it possible for me to speak directly to Iowans every day regarding COVID-19, and it's been made it possible for media outlets across the state to broadcast important information about our COVID-19 responses. Iowa PBS will continue to provide coverage of my press conferences through the legislative session, and after the session closes, we'll probably plan to live stream them online, and we'll provide more information about that in the coming weeks. So, like you, I'm eager to get things back to normal, but I'm committed to taking a measured approach, practicing personal responsibility, and doing my part to protect not only myself, my family, but our fellow Iowans. So just as I've asked you to do every day, and you have done, we will continue to get through this together. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Governor, in regards to the $1.25 million, and in particular the $85 million for telehealth, telework, and telelearning,
Yep.
do you get to distribute that, or do you work in concert with the legislature? And if so, how quickly do you want that money to go out the door, given the fact that schools may have to use broadband service this fall?
Right. So it is important, Kay, that we get that out quickly. And there was some funding that was attributed directly to K-12 education. I think it was about $26 million that really addresses kind of the immediate needs to make sure if we have to do distance learning again, even for a short amount of time, that we have the resources to connect to all Iowans. So that is a separate allocation that will be used for that. So out of the money that I talked about through the $1.25 billion, we'll utilize a similar program that we have for the broadband grant program that's already in place. There might be some adjustments to that, for instance, the match, so that we can really incentivize our private sector partners to be a part of this and to really scale up as quickly as possible. So Director Annette from OCIO has put a range of options together, and probably sometime next week I'll bring her in and have her walk through some of the options that we're looking at and what that time frame looks like. We have to have the money out the door by December 30th, so at least we have a program in place that we can maybe amend and change just a little bit, adapt a little bit to what the needs are, and then start working with our private sector partners across the state, as well as there's significant USDA funding that's still available that we can continue to have that be a part of really expanding significantly our broadband capacity and footprint. And then I believe even the FCC has additional funding as well. So, every state is dealing with this. Things are going to be different from here forward, and we need to have the capacity to be able to really economically, healthcare, education, and just living in general. So I'm excited about the opportunities.
I have a question for Director Durham. For the new program that you're talking about, you said for people who don't qualify, they'll be able to get assistance through Iowa Legal Aid.
Mm-hmm.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Can you talk about what they can do to help Iowans who are afraid of being evicted from their apartments or homes?
Right. Well, they'll individually counsel each individual case because every case is different. And what they will do is then identify service providers that can help them, whether that's financial or I'm not really sure. But we wanted to make sure, because we know that there are people that were falling into that category prior to COVID-19, and these funds can only be used during that time period we talked about, right? And so that's why we're working in partnership with them so that they can do the counseling. And they have a network of others. I don't know if, Ashley, if you want to expand upon that, but they have a network of service providers that they already work with. And so we'll be working in partnership to make sure that anyone that comes to us that we can't help, that at least we give them to someone who can help them along the way.
Governor, been seeing issues of people getting appointments at the downtown Des Moines test site. I know when I tried, I think it was yesterday or the day before, wasn't able to get an appointment. Is there any plans to open perhaps a second site in the Des Moines metro area because of just the large population?
Yeah, so we have to see what the capacity is. So I wouldn't be discouraged if you can't get in immediately. We actually have been at capacity for the last 3 days. It is exciting to see what we're able to offer Iowans all across the state. And as we've indicated over the last couple days, based on what we see with virus activity and what we see on population density, that goes into our into the strategy about where we move the test sites to and how we can start to maybe expand or move to address the needs of Iowans. Just remember, you have a lot of, this is one tool in the toolbox. You can still, contact the clinics. We're going to have the Burlington site that we talked about the other day. We're standing those up across the states. We're working with the FQHCs to see if there's some opportunity. Paige, did I get that right? Yeah. To see if there's some opportunities there. I mean, every day testing capacity and the way that we do it continues to change. So yesterday we hit another record. We had 2,503 tests completed just with Test Iowa throughout the state of Iowa. We have over 3,000 tests that are already scheduled for today at the various sites across the state of Iowa. So we're going to continue to enhance the processes, continue to look at what the data is telling us, and if we continue to see, a need, we will adjust what we're doing to meet the need of Iowans. But I am very grateful to the capacity that we have and our ability to meet the needs. And Iowans are interested because they are stepping up and they are going online, they're filling out the assessment, and they're going in to be tested. And that really is so beneficial to Department of Public Health and our epidemiologist team to really manage and contain virus activity in the state of Iowa. And that's how we're going to continue to be able to continue to open up.
James Lynch, Cedar Rapids Gazette.
Thank you, Governor. I wanted to ask about the eviction and foreclosure relief. What is the expectation of how many Iowans are going to need that assistance and how far that will reach? How many people can you help?
Do you have a ballpark? Really?
James, we really don't know because of the qualification issues. We don't know how many people are still getting that extra $600 a week. But we had estimated we are prepared to take 20,000 applications. How does that? So that's kind of what we prepared for. That's what we set our systems for. And that's what we're telling our providers that we're partnering with in the field. But that's about all I can tell you right now. I'm happy to give you a report in a week after we have it open.
Yeah, and we can bring Debbie back, or she can send it through at one of our press conferences, and we can update Iowans on that. And the other thing I want to talk about, we talked about the different buckets that we're allocating the CARES funding to. So, that potentially could adjust as some things maybe what we had projected may be a little higher. In some of the other programs that we projected, we might see might not be as great of need as we have anticipated. And that's part of the reason we held some of the money back. And so we can see kind of what transforms as we continue to move through addressing the needs of families and businesses and healthcare providers, and really our ability to to work and live remotely. So,
Rachel, Channel 5.
Good morning, Governor. Couple questions. Would you ever consider making it a requirement for businesses to report a 10% absenteeism rate while Iowa moves forward with the reopening process? And then on the data front, I know you expanded Test Iowa qualifications, and a couple people reached out saying they qualified even though they don't have symptoms and haven't been exposed. Is it helpful from a data standpoint for everyone to get tested, since we now know that some people do carry this virus and are asymptomatic, or would you recommend that those tests be saved for people showing symptoms?
Well, so we've already opened it up. So for the Test Iowa sites, anybody who wants to get tested can. Now, the State Hygienic Lab has they have different criteria for testing, so we have taken that into account as we move through this pandemic and we prepare for what may happen in the fall. We want to make sure that we have a certain number of tests ready and available to make sure that we can, test healthcare workers, or just to have the criteria be a little bit tighter. So, but we felt that it was important, especially with the guidance that they're giving us from the administration in really managing and continuing to do the contact tracing tracing, which is a key component of not only our ability to test, but then to do the case investigation so we can understand the scope of the virus activity that we're seeing throughout the state. So that's a critical component of that. So the outbreak, I'm going to kind of walk through, I think, the back and forth, sometimes it's kind of confusing on how we handle that. So we have announced each time there has been an outbreak in a business, and to date we've had 8 outbreaks that have been announced. So that starts with testing taking place, and there are many options. Sometimes, first of all, my team is in contact with our manufacturing and processing facilities on a daily basis. They are constantly reaching out to probably over 50 facilities just to check in and see how things are going, see if we can help facilitate and meet their needs so that we can continue to be proactive, not only in making sure that those employees are working in a safe environment, but so we can keep the food supply chain moving and keeping food on families' tables throughout this pandemic. So the testing takes place, and the Department of Public Health has a mandatory report in place. So anybody that's testing has to report positive and negative cases. Once they get those in, the case investigation begins. And that's where they contact the individuals that have, and they find out who they've been in contact with, they find out where they work. So they start to take that information in, and when they see maybe a significant spike in one of our businesses, then they work with the businesses to also gather the information. And then in addition to that, they are contacting the individuals who have been in contact with the person that tested positive. So in the case investigation process is when they start to determine, talking to the facilities, the number of employees, and if they meet the criteria of 10% of their workforce testing positive. When they meet that criteria that has been established, then the Department of Public Health says, we tell the public that there has been a outbreak in that specific business. So, so it is taking place through the testing, through the case investigation. That is how we define and find out if it has reached that parameter.
We're going to go to KMTV out in Omaha.
Yeah, Governor Reynolds, on Monday, outdoor concerts are allowed, and you're telling people they need to be 6 feet apart, but people might be dancing at these. So we called the health department asking for guidance on how to do this, and they didn't have an answer. So I'm wondering if you have an answer for that.
Well, I think, people have to be personally responsible, and social distancing of 6 feet is social distancing of 6 feet. So that means that unless you're with your family or somebody, that you're with, you need to practice social distancing. And if you can't do that, you need to have a face covering ready to continue to protect yourself. And they are at 50% capacity. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that? Okay.
We're going to go to Monica, Channel 13.
Sorry, I had to unmute there. Hi, Governor.
Hi.
So I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So you said that anyone testing has to report their cases to the Department of Public Health.
Yep.
So in the case of Tyson and Storm Lake, did it notify the Iowa Department of Public Health when its plant hit that 10% threshold that Public Health recommended for businesses to report outbreaks? I mean, 555 employees is far beyond 10%. So why did it take so long to get that information out to the public?
So you have to remember that they can get tested in many different ways. Sometimes Test Iowa comes in and we work with the facility to do all of the testing. Sometimes the individuals can go to their own physicians and get tested, and the place of business isn't aware of that. Businesses also, and we're seeing more and more of this, and I appreciate this, they are doing their own testing. They're working with the private sector and bringing a company in to the facility and do the testing. When the testing is done, they are submitted to the Department of Public Health, and at that point, through the case investigation, they start to see where there is the connectivity tied to a specific business. They reach out to the business. At that point, they don't know the number of employees that the business has, and so through the contact investigation and through the partnership with the businesses, they're able to see where the criteria is at and if they meet the 10% threshold. If they do, at that time, then they are designated as an outbreak. So, it's the process, and sometimes it depends on where they test, the timing that those tests come through the state hygienic lab. Sometimes it's 2 days. At the beginning, it was 5 to 7 days when they used the national lab. So there are a lot of variables that goes into the information that is being collected at the Department of Public Health, and what are the individuals that are doing the case investigation are drawing, and then they go through and move the process from there.
2 more questions. Second to last, David Pitt.
Yes, thank you. Governor, so what you just outlined there has shown us, though, in counties where there are meatpacking plants, the severity of the spread is significant by the time, it's made public, which I think kind of makes it more difficult for people in those communities to kind of put up their guard and be more careful, because you are making it a personal responsibility issue here. So maybe we could talk about that. I mean, is there a better way? I mean, there's got to be a way to swoop in sooner so that these things don't spread out of control in a county or a community before we know about.
Yeah, so that's why we're providing the information that we are on the website, so Iowans can go in and kind of see the numbers and what it looks like. But you have to remember, David, and I said this to you yesterday, since about March 11th, we have been in substantial spread, which means that Iowans should practice the same requirements and take the same proactive measures that we've asked them to do from the very beginning. Nothing has changed. We know that social distancing works. Social distance, practice good hygiene, wash your hands often, isolate if you're sick, and which has been consistent and not changed the entire time and is still the recommendation. If you fall into that vulnerable population, it's about 20% of Iowans that are 65 and older and or have underlying conditions, then you should continue to stay home as much as possible. Limit your trips to essential trips when you go out. Be familiar with your surroundings. I would, if you can't practice social distancing, have a face covering handy. So none of that has changed. And I'm excited. We are going to continue as we learn more and as we enhance the website. We are going to continue to provide Iowans more and more information so that they will be educated and will have the information at hand to monitor what's happening with COVID-19 and the virus activity within our state. So the same measures apply, again, that we have been talking about since we entered into substantial spread, and we have said over and over, we have to learn to live with and manage the virus until or if a vaccine is discovered.
Last question, Des Moines Register.
Thank you, Governor. In addition to the coronavirus, there's obviously a lot going on up in Minnesota right now. The death of George Floyd and the aftermath and the protests. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the situation up there.
Well, my prayers and condolences go out to the family. I think it is heartbreaking and horrific to see an individual treated so unjustly. We just must ensure that justice is served, and it's just heartbreaking to think that, and disgusting to think that something like that could happen in this country. And so it's important that, justice is served and that the right and appropriate actions are taken.
Governor, quick follow-up to that. There's going to be a protest
plan tonight at the Capitol. What's your message on that?
Well, as Americans, we have the right to peacefully protest, and we should. But riots and violence serve nobody. That doesn't even do justice to his memory. So we have the right as American citizens to protest peacefully. But riots and violence are not the answer, especially individuals who had nothing to do with it, to extend that devastation to them. So I know Iowans will do it right, and they will do it in a peaceful manner, and they have the right to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.